Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one latest post covering finance and property news. It's Monday come around again, and Edwin is back for another rant. Edwin, how are you going?
I'm going good, Martin. I am going good. How good is Victoria? This is the battle of the ashes, Martin. This is what the gladiators are made out of. The tournaments. This is it. I mean, they've really sticking it up to the New South Wales government, aren't they?
Yeah, you mean bait advertising, underquoting, misleading conduct? Who's trying to get ahead?
Well, okay. This is the conundrum, right? So, does it mean that the real estate industry is better in New South Wales because the fines only, were just over 200,000 or thereabouts, and the fines over in Victoria are what, 1.8 million for 2024? So what does it really what's it really reflecting? Or are the states really as bad as each other? But look, I guess from our point of view and from a policing point of view, look, Victoria have got it all over New South Wales, and old mate Mincy has to step it up. They had something like 20 inspectors out on the beat on the weekend, allegedly, and they visited 50 auctions to tell you what's been going on. But we reported on this last year, and we said that this is the Victorian government was really going to take it to the selling agents, and particularly the auctions, those properties being sold under an auction campaign. But this is where we used to also do the same in New South Wales, Martin, back in the day, 15 years ago. But then the powers to be, got in the way, and they didn't fund fair trade in New South Wales. My understanding, from what those in the industry tell me, that fair trade in New South Wales allegedly is in a lot of mess, and therefore, that they need that a lot needs to be revamped. I know they have been underfunded for the last two decades. Hence the reason, when they merged property services with just general real estate stuff, and you went from somewhere roughly around 30 inspectors to 10, and to be dealing with underquoting and other sorts of issues in the real estate industry, to fencing disputes between neighbours. I mean, it's crazy stuff.
It is absolutely, and this article really quite nicely encapsulates the New South Wales story. Underquoting crushes dreams, it says, right? And of course, what they were talking about here is that real estate agents caught illegally underquoting on auction guides are only copping a fine of around $2,200, with the minister responsible now conceding he will consider a name and shame register to stamp out the practice. Of course, they can, in theory, fine them $22,000. Massive amount of money, that, right? If people want more information, and I made a show on this, there is actually underquoting guidelines for residential property from 2020, right, from Fair Trading New South Wales, which is quite interesting when you actually read it, because it does spell it all out, Edwin. But your point is dead right. If they don't actually do anything about it, if they don't actually check and, frankly, attend the auctions, well, what's the point? And in fact, I made a show about it called "As Caution Still Grips the Property Market, Can You Trust the Numbers?" And that's the point. So I went through this in some detail because, to my mind, this underquoting thing is a really, really important thing for people to get their heads around, right? Because it's part of a complex that effectively means that the agents are throwing out numbers one way to vendors, another way for prospective purchasers, trying to sort of bridge the two. And, guess what? Somebody's going to lose out on that. And of course, also overlaying the story about the fact that auctions. Auctions, they make more money on auctions because they can charge for marketing. So, and by the way, as we touched on last week, they also have the paid bidders, right, who are there to help lift the prices. The question is, unless the regulators actually get their act together and start really doing things, nothing has changed. And, frankly, I don't think anything has changed much over the last 10 years, other than, of course, the actual value of prices have gone up. So the amount of money involved is also higher.
Yeah, and this is the interesting scenario, Martin. As I said, look, I wrote that article in put on LinkedIn 10 years to the day on Friday when the the underquoting article came through on over the weekend. Almost 10 years to the day, and I called the article that I put up on LinkedIn called it "Price it Low and Watch It Go." And because I was talking about underquoting and the shenanigans that was going on in the industry, and this is when I was I had an office in Parramatta. I was operating as a selling agent, and I was coming across all these agencies and competing with agencies that were using those tactics, like you said, that where agencies and agents are buying the listing. In other words, quoting a very high price to the actual price that is put on the agency agreement to that is advertised on domain and real estate or any other form of advertising campaign. So there's in many cases there's been anywhere between 20, 30, even 40% difference between the advertised price and the selling price. I did a story with Property Observer. And that was even before, probably another 5 years before that. And I said, look, you can attribute 10% above the guide to when when the property market is hot, and you can attribute about roughly about 10% to emotion, but not when not when you're getting 15, 20, 25, 30% in prices. So this is that, and then the minister at that time, under under the Liberal government, Dominello, brought out these guidelines, and what's happened since the guidelines? As I said it then, and I'll say it again. You bring out a guideline, you bring out a regulation, you bring out a legal requirement, and the REIs and the cronies, all that sit in the board, which are the main owners of the main franchise groups, will work out 6 ways to Sunday to circumvent those regulations, guidelines, and legislation. This is what's been happening over and over again. Let's not pretend that the price it low and watch it go mantra came out of the halls of the many franchise groups offices for many years. Look, I know a solicitor that has one of the old LJ Hooker manuals that actually promotes in the training manual, promotes this whole thing of pricing the low, watch and go word for word. And we know that many trainers over the years have preached on that, and they promote it and they present it in different ways. No different to the language that now we have. We've got NCBs. What the hell is an NCB? A non-committed buyer. It's a dummy bidder. But the difference now is to be politically correct. We can't call them dummy bidders anymore because it might upset the little bunnies. We've got to call them NCBs. Not only the names have changed to dilute the sting and to dilute the cancer that it's the blotch that's in the real estate industry, but they're also paid, Martin. They're actually being paid. They have become dummy bidders. Have become a part of the payroll in many real estate offices. This is crazy. Then on top of that, other things that the home buyers have to navigate through is your price transparency. There is no price transparency, and it's getting worse. And on top of that, there's even less talk or less chatter about material fact. when agents are meant to disclose material fact, you don't get that. If anything, it's, oh, don't tell me, don't tell me anything, because if you tell me, then I'll have to tell the general public as well. That's how they go to a listing, Martin, like this. So because in their eyes, the agent says, well, if you don't tell me, I don't know. But in most cases, they know anyway. 90% of the time, they know, and they pretend they don't know, and they use ignorance as the excuse. And hopefully sooner than later, agents are going to find out that ignorance is no excuse when it comes to legal proceedings.
Well, we'll see, Edwin, but I've got a question for you. Do you really think that naming and shaming, which is what the minister in New South Wales has suggested should be done, will make any difference at all? Because I would argue that it's so rife, so widespread in the industry that it's going to be quite hard to be able to find people who don't do it, right, if you start naming and shaming. I mean, to my mind, the regulatory framework is just ineffective. And that means that prospective vendors are really on their own, and prospective purchasers don't really have a hope. And I just want to come back to your other point, this transparency question, price transparency. It is disgraceful what's happening. If you look on the portals, more and more times, the information is now being suppressed as to what the prices actually were. And interestingly, if you look at the definitive data on the New South Wales Value General site, I discover that quite often the price, if it is disclosed on the property portals, is not accurate relative to what the actual definitive transaction price was when it comes through the transferring information on the Value General site. Now, of course, in New South Wales, that information is still publicly available if you know where to look. But in other states, the whole thing's been privatized, so you cannot now get this definitive information unless you are in the industry or unless you pay a lot of money. So I don't know how people can navigate the property industry at all and try and figure out what fair value is, because the information is just not available.
No, it's very difficult. It has become very difficult, and it's going to continue to become even more difficult, in months to come. To answer the question, Martin, is naming and shaming, is that going to curb the shenanigans? It won't, and I'll tell you why it won't curb. This is my personal reason why it won't curb the shenanigans that goes on, Martin, because the general public, when it comes to the vendor side of things, I want to believe that 8 in 10 will go along with the marketing campaign that the agent promotes. And in 8 out of 10 instances and occasions, the vendors are just as culprit as the selling agents are in terms of underquoting and bad advertising, because they get conned, they get basically convinced, into believing that is the way to go, that is the way to do it, that is the way that they're going to achieve the highest price, and they will go along with it. So to an extent, when the REIV said, "Oh, don't blame the agents, blame the vendors. The vendor made me do it." Not so much that the vendor made them do it down there, but it's more to the point that they were convinced in colluding with the agent and the agency. I hear it over and over again. So the vendors go along with it because they want to achieve the highest price on the day as well. And at the end of the day, they don't really care. And so so in terms of naming and shaming, no, it's not going to do anything, because the other thing also there, Martin, is the fact that if you go to any real estate office in Sydney, you go to any real estate office in Sydney, and you were to ask them the question, who's the most prolific underquoter in your suburb, and every office will tell you who they are. Like they know each other. People know each other. I mean, I know who which agencies participate in the are more prolific, all over Sydney, because we travel all over Sydney looking for properties for clients. So we get to know them, and we get to and we talk to them candidly. I talk to them candidly and say, "Come on, mate. Yeah, you knew it wasn't going to. You knew the property wasn't worth 1.1. You knew it was always worth 1.35, and they all tell you the same thing. Oh, but that's how the game is played, Edwin. You know that. You've been in the industry. You know that. You know that's how the game is played. So buyers have to really be equipped. They have to be really well versed, and they have to try their darndest in order to keep up with all the shenanigans that goes on. Further to this, Martin, the way they got away with it with Dominello, because the minister at that time, he's best mates with. I think he went to university with the CEO of the REI New South Wales. They were pen pals of some sort, and I think the REI New South Wales also were contributors to the political parties, or they are contributors to political parties anyway. So they're not going to really want change, right? So what in order to appease the government, the real estate industry bought in the before you bid and before you buy, property inspection reports. In other words, they made the vendors buy or contract building inspectors to provide the building and pest inspection reports to give to the prospective buyers, so that it won't cost them $650 per report. It would only cost them a fraction of that, whether it be $45, $65, $85. They'd only pay a fraction, so they wouldn't complain as much, because they, in their eyes, well, you haven't got much to complain because you really didn't spend as much as what you're saying you spent, or because the whole thing about the guidelines that Dominello brought in was to do with the amount of money that prospective buyers spent in order to do the research before they went to auction, and because $650 for a building inspection report, and then there was conveyancing as well. So in order to appease the regulators and the government, that's what the industry did. But it created a bigger problem for the buyers, because now they're conned into believing that the building inspection reports, the before you bid, before you buy building inspection reports, are as solid as they can be, and they're not. They're a lightweight report that you wouldn't even use to wipe your backside if you needed to go to the toilet, and there was no, there wasn't some eucalyptus leaves around for you to grab.
No. Well, they're not really worth the paper they're written on. They're part of the marketing campaign. That people need to understand that those little Mickey Mouse surveys, they're part of the marketing campaign, and have nothing to do with actually providing the due diligence that a prospective purchaser needs. You need to get your own survey separately, of course, which means that you still have to pay that. And yet it's spun along. And this is the problem. We're actually in the middle of spin, and so it's very hard for people to navigate. And it's not going to get any different or any easier, I think, ahead. Now, you've posed an interesting question here, Edwin, which is which of these two are funnier, right? The plea for help as company involved in the new Sydney fish market collapses, or voted hottest agent in Queensland. You can't make this stuff up, can you?
I mean, which is funnier? But then remember what we said last year. Remember what we said that the builders and developers were waiting for, and I mean, this is just part and parcel of it. That's the first article. Construction giant Multiplex is seeking urgent government support to prop up subcontractors at the $836 million Sydney fish market development following the collapse of the firm tasked with fabricating the building's iconic wave roof. You architecturally design something, and what it means is more expensive, harder to build, and more problems down the future. Except this one, the problem started before they even start building it. And on the other picture, you've got bow-tied stocks from the handle bow-tied stocks from Queensland. Put this up. I mean, what a billboard! Voted the hottest agent in Queensland. I didn't know that you had to be hot in order to sell real estate in Queensland. I mean, look, am I being sexist and saying, hey, I don't fancy this one, but hey, when are the ladies going to start posting this sort of stuff?
Oh, careful, Edwin. Well, but it just shows you the depths to which people will stoop. And look, it is worth just highlighting again that we have this continued pressure on the government to bail the construction industry out. It's quite fascinating to see that playing out at the moment. And we're going to see more of it, of course. No surprise, perhaps, that we will. The bottom line, of course, on all of this is that we know that the whole construction industry is riddled with issues. And you may have seen this. This was actually from the Walleye Creek unit block inspection. Fair Trading made an inspection, and they found that combustible material, no smoke detectors, waterlogging has made a staggering number of defects uncovered at a major southern Sydney apartment block. This was built about 5 years ago and included 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, along with restaurants and shops. And, you can go through the list. A lot of it's quite serious. For example, things like combustible materials being used, the fire-related stuff is not working properly. For example, the fire doors and all sorts of those things like that. And other defects, including the hydrants. And then you've got even things like proper drainage on the level 1 of the car park, resulting in excess water gathering, inadequate waterproofing, defects. Now, the developer has been given between 1 month and June to fix all the defects. So how do you think that's going to fly? And this is, for me, another really important factor that people need to understand. Construction quality has gone into the toilet. And frankly, we know that the majority of properties, particularly high-rise properties, have these sorts of defects.
Over the last couple of months, I've found out that there's a building in Linfield that has a Coles supermarket underneath it, with the residential build on top, and these are all hearsay, right, from one of the senior plumbers that's working there. It's hearsay. He said it, and he said the amount of shit that's being covered up and hidden from when the inspectors come in. That we're going to have a major inspection of the complex early February, and wait for it. They were going to prepare the best 5 units for the inspectors to look at, and they weren't going to take them anywhere else in the building. And he said, as one of the senior plumbers there, he said, mate, I wouldn't let my mother-in-law buy one of these apartments. And it hasn't been completed yet. So people, and these are apartments that are worth a mozza, upwards of 1.3 million for a 2-bedroom apartment. Then you've got a complex that was that's over in Winston Hills Way, over at the Hills area, on the near the Bull and Bush, I think it is, and a bathroom renovation company had just been given the contract to redo all the bathrooms in that complex because they've used the wrong waterproofing membrane in all the wet areas. And the the minister found that the commissioner only caught that by sheer coincidence, because one of the power points in the bathroom was loosely fit, and when he got close to it to check it out, he realized the waterproofing membrane inside the cavity that, and then when he took a sample of it, and then they realized it was the wrong waterproofing membrane. It was one that's toxic that hasn't been used for decades, but they've used it. How the hell they got a hold of that? Who knows? And so, something like 47 or 57 apartments are affected. And these are apartments that people have bought and that were ready to be moved into. And this is one of the buildings that got caught up with the dildo issues when they went into liquidation. So this is, you and I know that this is going on all the time, Martin. You and I know, and many people also have the false concept that that this only happens with high-rise developments, or this only happens with apartments. But guess what, folks? It's happening with subdivision lots. It's happening with house and land packages. It's happening with townhouse sites, villa sites. It's happening all over the place because they just don't have the controls there, and the private certification has really gotten worse. Although they're trying to bring in changes, but the changes that they're trying to bring in through the NCC and the stricter regulations is just making properties a lot more costlier to build. and and developers and builders have to spend a hell of a lot more money just doing reports in order to get started, and the red tape is costing a lot of time, and hence the reason why those targets won't be met, not for the next last year. And early last year, we were saying 5 to 7 years. I dare say now it's going to be 10 to 12 years.
Well, that's right. And I thought I'm sure you saw the recent Senate discussion about whether, in fact, the housing fund had actually built any properties or whether they just bought them. And of course, they just bought them. Maybe they should buy some of these defective properties and fix them up. But there was this article, interestingly, relating to Toronto. And they were basically saying young home buyers seeking to climb the property ladder are stuck with hard to sell condos. And what's quite interesting about that is that I'm seeing exactly the same in Australia now. So I do quite a lot of work with people who bought the North Ryde apartments some years ago. The prices peaked, 2017, 2018, something like that, and have continued to drift down ever since. And I'm getting more and more stories now of people who've bought these high-rise apartments. The value is going down, not up. The costs of the strata fees continue to rise, and the defects are mounting. This is a long-term, slow-burning disaster. And now I'm seeing more and more people stuck with these properties, whether you're actually in it yourself or whether you've got it as an investment property. And it's not just a few properties, it's thousands and thousands of properties. So maybe the Housing Future Fund should be buying up these defective properties and paying to fix them, because I can't see any other way of sorting this problem out. People are being caught and are stranded.
Well, there are certain issues that are fixable, but then there are others that aren't, Martin. And you will always have a building that's deteriorating, not only depreciating, but deteriorating, a lot quicker than the older medium density builds, even as late as the early 2000s. But yeah, there was. I can't remember at the time whether it was 2GB or 2UE. I had a discussion with the minister years ago when they were bringing in the security, the so-called security bond for anybody buying new apartments or off-the-plan apartments, where they were going to be withholding 2% of the the value of the property in order to assist future issues. And back then, it was on a Saturday, and I called in and I was talking to the minister, and I was saying, look, the 2%, that's a drop in the ocean. When you compare at that time, I was discussing in other forums and and writing up articles as to how marketing companies were being paid upwards of 5%, 5 to 8%. As marketing fees to sell off the plan apartments to the unprotected buyers. A lot of them obviously were from overseas. So this is the issue that you have, Martin, is that a lot of the people, a number of people that bought into these high-rise developments by way of first home buyers grants or locals that bought in as a principal place of residence, unfortunately, are accompanied in the same complex by the majority of the complex being investors, and once again, a high percentage of those investors of those properties live abroad, and they don't really care as to the issues, because they're not living there. They're just interested in the rents and whatever rent they get, because they were bought for one of the main reasons being to park money here in Australia. So it doesn't really phase them. So you're really pushing the proverbial uphill, because you're not only dealing with the issue of the buildings deteriorating rapidly, but you're also dealing with a high percentage of owners that make up the owners' corporation. They don't really care, or they don't know what's going on, because the property managers don't tell them, and they just take the money out of the rent to pay for any outgoings, and you're stuck because you're there from a different purpose. It's not an investment for you. It's a principal place of residence, and you're watching your hard-earned savings literally go down the drain.
Absolutely. And we're seeing a lot of that. And talking about going down the drain, there's another reason why people are actually struggling with the whole cost of living. And of course, we've seen now more money being paid out of government coffers to help support the Queensland disaster recovery. Food prices are going to probably go up because of the fruit and vegetable costs rising. But this one actually hit me as well. The climate risk hits home insurance. And they were showing that in the Hawkesbury, we're looking at very, very significant, more than $7,000 for the average premium for residential building insurance. And the recent data showed here that around 78% of homeowners are fully insured. That means that 15% are underinsured and 4% are uninsured. Now, when you look at it more carefully, what you'll discover is that those who are uninsured or underinsured are actually quite often in these areas where the premiums are huge. And this is another cost that people haven't got their head around. So, if you're in an apartment complex, you've got high strata fees. If you've got a property, on a floodplain, your insurance fees are running through the roof. And of course, we saw in the CPI, that was one of the strongest elements within the CPI drivers, more than 20% on average, but some even more significant. And by the way, just to tell you about the insurance, this headline showed that the insurance spike is also hurting New South Wales businesses as well. So this is a very important issue too. And I guess that could well be those like builders who need insurance. So, they're under pressure too. I mean, the more you look at this stuff, the more unsustainable you think this whole situation is with regard to what's going on. And yet, the question you've got to ask yourself, Edwin, looking at the home price chart, who is leading the charge?
Look, and this is the thing, man. These are areas. These are areas where historically you could say are the lower value properties, or in terms of your freestanding homes, and a lot of these areas where the insurance companies are basically slowly walking away from, are where your first home buyers want to start, because a number of the homes are still relatively affordable for our first home buyer that wants to have a family, have a bit of land. And because in surrounding areas they can't even afford the new developments. One, the build across 260 square meters of land, and the house takes up the majority of the land envelope. And so is it really a house, or is it really just a villa? And this is the thing, because then you start looking at the Nepean area as well, where the insurances have skyrocketed. Then you start also looking at your Parramatta River, the areas that the Parramatta River spreads across. Then you go to the creek, I call it the creek behind Cabramatta, and those areas there where it used to be affordable, but they're also floodplains. I mean, and then you get even closer to the inner west. You've got your Woolite Creeks and all those areas there. They're floodplain as well. So you've got all these natural causeways that have been historically flood prone, and yet, as I keep on saying over and over again, we're building the wrong buildings across the landscape. We're not really taking care of or mitigating the issues around the urban sprawl, you could say, but yet there's a lot more money. The interesting thing is, the irony of this whole thing is that there's more money going into the council coffers. There's more money going in by way of council contribution, and there's more that is demanded of the developers that do a lot of these subdivisions than what there used to be 3 decades ago. But you're getting a lot less, and less is being really properly engineered. With respect to you could say natural disasters, to mitigate natural disasters. So it really is a mess. It really, really is a mess. But look, you can see by the graph that all along the areas that are still leading the charge are your your low to mid-tier property groups and in areas where people just want to get in, just want to get in. They're stretching themselves just a bit over, a tad over the 2 million. But yeah, there's less and less properties available. And when you start seriously looking at the homes below the million, the freestanding homes below the million, as we've been looking over the last 3 weeks, they've been consistently dropping. Yeah, that's your chart, your domain, Sydney region, freestanding homes, under the $1 million. We started at 1,140, went to 1,131. Now we're at 1,119, and those numbers just keep on slowly creeping down. Like I keep on saying over again, very soon we're not going to have any listings for freestanding homes under $1 million. Under $1 million, and yet the need is only getting greater and greater.
Yeah, well, there's a little phrase from the UK called Hobson's choice, which is you've got no choice, right? So if you want to buy anything, well, what do? You either pay up or you buy a defective apartment, or you buy further out. None of those are very attractive propositions. And of course, if you're buying further out, then you've got no infrastructure, and your travel costs and the various fees and charges for getting around are just going through the roof. So however you look at this, you conclude that this is, a pretty major problem that has been long in the making, and it's now all coming up to the surface just at the time of the election. Now, of course, neither side of politics really wants to get and tackle this. I don't know whether you saw there was a question asked on Q&A last Monday. A guy who was in the rental sector basically asked the politicians, shouldn't you be dialing back migration because I can't afford even to rent anywhere? Frankly, I was disgusted by the responses from the panel pretty much across the board. Nobody really took him seriously. But what's interesting is that has gone viral. And in fact, I'll be having a chat hopefully with him later in the week, and we'll make a show with him about his experiences of just trying to get and stay in the rental sector. It makes you cry when you actually, realize what real people are going through here. And yet the politicians are just completely disconnected from what's really going on. And the social consequences of all of this and the implications in terms of what it means just for people's lives, that's the thing that I get cross about, because the people in charge, the politicians, are all sitting on their big salaries and their big superannuation payouts later, have no idea what it's like to be an ordinary household, an ordinary person just trying to get by, and to make the argument as clear as you can. We've got a split in society between those who are on the wagon and are doing quite well, and those who are not on the wagon and trying desperately to find a way to get on it. And this gap is getting wider and wider.
Look, two things, Martin. One is, what didn't the Treasurer, I could be wrong, the New South Wales Treasurer, didn't he say something along the lines that when they were talking about the homelessness issues in San Francisco, he said it's a choice that blue collar workers are making. I mean, did he make an insinuation that that's the issue of the blue collar workers? Choices that you make. I'm just asking the question, right? But like you said, this is the how much they're separated from the real world, because they get a regular pay packet. It's a secure, cushy job with a great retirement package at the end. And what do? They play around with our money in terms of our taxes, and they contribute our money and our taxes to overseas ventures, and that in a way, whether you believe it or not, are not necessarily have any meaning with us, unless you've got some an ideological belief, or you're taking a stance on a certain thing. But at the end of the day, the old saying goes, Martin, is we need to look after our own backyard before we start trying to fix everybody else's, because there are many shortfalls. Look, the the other thing is I want to say to the people that are out there looking for rentals, um, there are ways that you can try and navigate around the issues. I personally just helped a client that's in the Central Coast. He's got a disability. He's legally blind. He can see for a certain distance, but legally blind, he can't drive. He can't. He's got limitations, and he was finding it very difficult to come down to Sydney to look at inspect properties, and they wouldn't attend. He couldn't attend or he couldn't apply for properties unless he attended the inspection anyway. But he reached out to me because I've helped their family along the years, in helping them to sell and help them to buy properties. And he reached out, and I said, yeah, happy to help. When it comes to that, as you know, Martin, in the rental side of things or the property management side of things, when it comes to helping and assisting tenants, I've got a big heart for it because I spent 18 years in property management, and I could see the how the regulations and the legislation and how it was all the scales were against many tenants, and we try to bring some sort of um, yeah equality, call it some sort of bridge that gap in the time. So my heart goes out to them. Yeah, look, and we were able to assist. Now the interesting thing is it took me a little bit longer to convince the property manager to give me a 12-month lease, because the typical tenure that they give somebody straight off the bat is 6 months, so that they can obviously change tenancies or increase. But look, the regulations around tenancies have changed a bit as well, which is sort of assisting many that are already that have got leases in charge. But there are ways, and as I keep on saying over and over again, when it comes to looking for tenancies, looking for accommodation, you really need to reach out to. There are some property managers that will listen and will take hardship stories to heart, and they will go beyond to assist. So yeah, we're assisted by this agency. It's an LJ Hooker office, and the property manager was really accommodating, and I understood the circumstance, and I was able to secure a 12-month lease. Almost tried to get an 18-month lease, almost got away with that, but I didn't want to push the envelope too hard.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. The industry is not universally bad, but unfortunately, a lot of those people who are literally on the front line trying to find somewhere to live, that they're out of options really at the moment, which is pretty sad. Now, talking about options, here's another question for you. When you think about the auctioneer for your property, how do you go about finding an auctioneer that makes sense? How do you choose the right auctioneer? That's actually a question you posed on X the other day.
Yeah, look, it was an interesting because one of the comments there that got brought up was, why does an auctioneer really need to visit the property before the day of the auction, and why do they really need to know and get to know the owner of the property? Outside of the common sense response to that, I wrote down a couple of other points that I believe are of high interest, and especially if vendors want to get the best result for the properties, and the agents are pushing one way, so I can write these down for our viewers and followers that are looking at selling their homes, and the agents are advising them to sell their homes by way of auction, in order to help them select the right auctioneer that's going to do the right thing for you. I just picked out a few of the many. There are a lot more, but for the sake of time, I just want to talk about these ones. One is the agent, in my opinion, the auctioneer needs to be very familiar with the property, and they're not going to do that by attending the auction 5 minutes before attending the property, or when they attend the auction, and try to get to know the intricate details of the property 5 minutes before the auction on the day, or even half an hour, as I say in the video there, you're not going to get the best result. You're not going to get a person that's well educated in promoting. Because at the end of the day, as you and I have been saying, Martin, it's a show. And if it's like going to listen to to a music concert, or you're going to go and listen to a cover band, for example, or a pub, you're going to listen to a cover band, and the lead singer doesn't know the lyrics to the song, doesn't fully know the lyrics to the song, and makes up shit as they go. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? You're going to be really disappointed, regardless of how well uh, the rest of the band play the instruments. If the lead singer doesn't know the full lyrics of something and makes shit up as they go, well, you're going to know. You're going to be very disappointed. You're going to be pissed. Uh, that you wasted your time. So in a similar vein, the auctioneer needs to become very, very familiar with the property, understand the intricate details of the property, get the feel. The way I put it is whether it's a selling agent or the auctioneer, they need to be sold on the property themselves in order for them to tell the story as to the value of the property. Not try and sell the property, but tell a story as to the great qualities of the property that they're trying to sell on the day. That's one thing. Now, the other thing, which is very, very important, the auctioneer also needs to become very familiar with the attributes of the property in relation to renovations, extensions, more to the point, extensions, and extra dwellings that you might find on on the property, like a granny flat or a studio at the back. Are they council approved? Most auctioneers auction off properties, and they rattle off like my mate, the auctioneer that I shared a few weeks ago about when I had to clarify to him that the garage that on the day of the auction he called a granny flat, and promoted the sale of the property on the day as a 4-bedroom house with a granny flat that can attract a rental of $450 a week. Well, guess what, Martin? It's not an approved granny flat, and even if you get a high price on the day for the sale, in my personal opinion, from what I understand about contract law, it's that the purchaser, the highest bidder on the day, still has the opportunity to rescind the contract because they bought something that was contrary to what's on the contract. Now you could say, oh, well, caveat emptor and all this and all that. Well, hey, it's going to be a mess in the legal in the courts, and you can be rest assured that both vendor and selling agent and auctioneer are going to be paying a hefty price because of the misleading information. And if fair trading's there, they could pull hefty fines as well. So auctioneers need to clarify those points in order to be more confident. But then again, Martin, they don't do it, I guess, because they again don't want to know, right? What they don't know doesn't hurt them, and they can spin all sorts of BS when they're ranting and raving about the property. Look, at the end of the day, for the first points there, it's really all about being better prepared, better prepared. I say that you need to know the vendor, and you need to get to know the vendor, and you need to have that time, adequate time with the vendor, days before the day of the auction, because you need to strategize, and you need to strategize properly. Now, this is more from a strategic point of view. There are the vendors. Most vendors don't understand the auction process themselves. Uh, they just get told, a little bit before the auction themselves what a vendor bid is, what they can do, what they can't do, blah blah, this and that, and they're in it's a huge emotional rush for them as well. It could come off well, or it could work against them and not achieve the price that they were told that they were going to achieve. So it's a time where the auctioneer needs to explain to you the strategy, the different scenarios. And again, if you liken it onto going into a ring, going into combat, where you've got the opposition being the buyers, and you're trying to win them over or beat them, whichever terminology you want to use. Well, you got to be well prepared, and the vendors have got to be well prepared as well to understand the process, understand what's happening, and a lot of the cases, vendors get all confused about the vendors bit because that's not very well explained, and when they should use the vendors bid and how to use the vendors bid. Now, if you listen to Tom Panos, old mate Tom, he teaches that the vendors bid should come in low. I mean, I asked the question why. Why is the vendors bid going to come? Why should it come in low? Now I'm standing on the on the side of helping somebody to sell the property. I've questioned that over the years. I've questioned his philosophy or his reasoning for that. But other than to point out the fact that the only logical reason, in my view, is because it prepares the vendor to accept a low price post the auction when he goes into a private treaty campaign. That's the only other reason. That's the only logical reason. The only reason that makes sense to accept a low vendor's bid. And I've always said to people, don't get fooled when I've helped, and I've spoken to family and friends when they've got their homes and properties up for auction, and and they've asked me for some tips. I said one of the most important tips is if you have to use the vendor's bid, don't come in low. Don't come in low, and don't pass it in. Don't pass it in low because it only sets a precedent, and it only sets the trend moving forward if you have to go into a private treaty campaign. So, but that's really a strategy that selling agents and auctioneers use against their own clients, which is crazy, right? But then obviously I say, well, look, if you don't do this, if you don't take these things into account, and you get a bad result in the day, well, it's on you. It's on the vendors for believing the bullshit of the selling agents.
That's a very important checklist, Edwin, and I'm sure that a lot of people who are in the process or who have gone through the process of being on the vendor side of an auction will ask themselves, why didn't I do it? Because these are critical points. And the number of times that I've seen the auctioneer rock up on the day of the auction, literally just a few minutes before, never seen the property, never read the documentation until literally just standing up in front of the crowd, how they can possibly do a good job. And as you say, this idea of the low vendor bid, well, that's another way of just trying to keep the price low and make sure. Remember that agents get paid for a transaction at any price, and it's worth just bearing that in mind. Well, I suppose as we go on towards the end of the show, Edwin, we should just briefly touch on the numbers, because of course the numbers are what we look at, and we look at the real numbers. So this is basically on domain. In the Sydney region on the 10th, 20,079. A week later, on the 17th, 20,862. And you can see here that the trends are, well, they're still the trends, Edwin.
Well, it's interesting that they really jumped up this week. The numbers have jumped up by almost 800 new listings, or shall we say, it's really not necessarily 800 new listings, but it's listings that are lagging on market. Why? Because vendors are believing that, one, the hype, and two, they're taking the selling agents to task. Because don't forget it, and the agents say, oh, the vendors aren't meeting the market. No, dipstick. They want the money that you told them that you were going to get them. If you told them you're going to get them $2 million, and now you're trying to sell the property for $1.6 million, well, it's not on the vendor, it's on you. Because you told them that their property was worth 2 million or 2 million plus or 3 million plus, and you're trying to shortchange them by about 15%. So properties are staying on market longer post-auction campaigns. A lot have been taken off the auction campaigns because the buyers aren't prepared to commit, or telling agents we're not going to bid on the day. So they're trying to. In other words, guess what, Martin? The poor little bunnies have to work for the money. Have to do a little bit more work. So that's why the numbers seem to be swelling up a bit. But it's we still got another 4 or 5 weeks of warm weather to go through before we really get started in the winter season.
Yes, Edwin. And in Melbourne on the 10th, 28,538, rising to 28,737 a week later. So the same trends there. But this was quite an interesting little take that you said, get out of Melbourne.
Yeah, well, we're back to wanting to get out of Melbourne, right? Because it's not getting any easier for those that have to pay the land taxes and other imposts that the Victorian government are putting on property investors and even new home buyers. Because, and I said new home buyers, they're paying it because the developers and the builders are paying those exorbitant taxes in order to build, in order to put to keep their machine rocking and rolling and getting a product onto the market to make some money, because the government needs those taxes, Martin. They need those taxes because they've got to pay the bikie gangs that are on the payroll. Some are earning $11,000 a week just because they're part of a gang. This prompted me to ask the exes and if anybody knows where I can get some more ink, some taters, because it's $11, 11,000 a week. Multiple. That's $500,000 a year, Martin. Hey, I'll get some more ink along my arms and anywhere around the neck.
You've got to have the right tats if you're going to play this game, Edwin. Absolutely. Let's look at Brisbane briefly. On the 10th, 3,924. A week later, 3,902. So very little movement there. And of course, I guess that Brisbane could be dealing with the fallout from the recent floods and things. Looking at the auctions, interesting. The auction clearance rates. Not sure what to make of it really, because the numbers are still there. But I saw again over the weekend, of course, all the spruikers were out saying, "Hey, the clearances are higher." I wonder.
Yeah, this is for me the low numbers in comparison to last year tells me one thing, and that is that the vendors aren't confident with the process. Not too. I'm not too fussed about what they're achieving at the end of the day or the percentages. They're just for information for our followers and viewers. Let them make the decision what they want to make of it. I'm looking at the actual. The actual numbers when you start comparing 2024 numbers to 2025 numbers. Look, Martin, I could be wrong. But I kind of think that there's a lot of people that are taking the properties to auction that have been watching our shows and they're saying, hold on a minute, is the auction campaign the way to go? Let me watch the Monday evening property rants. Let me get educated. And I'd say that a lot of people are getting educated and they're starting to realize, hey, when times are getting tough, when we're starting to get to the next level of pricing and things are a little bit tough there, maybe the auction campaign isn't the way to go because those numbers are slipping. You had week 9, 805 in comparison to 652 in same week this year. Week 10, 808 in 24, 601 in 25. Week 11, 799 to 575 last week. And week 12, we've got 616 this week. And last year we had 1,074. So what does that tell? It's almost 50% of the numbers that were taken to. So I think I'm one to believe that people are starting to think twice and are starting to question more and more the process. It's for me, it's more about the process than the outcomes. When I look at the numbers.
Yeah, and I think confidence levels are still relatively, rocky at the moment. We've got this international backcloth, of course. We've got the election coming up, and a whole bunch of other things are all running against at the moment. And I think more people are getting more skeptical about the whole auction process as they've been watching our rant, and get a bit more, get armed with a bit more information. Maybe they make different decisions. We'll just briefly touch on the rentals. So on the 10th in Sydney, 10,275. A week later, 10,204. And in Melbourne, on the 10th, 10,791 compared with 10,744. So, wobbling a little sideways. It's an interesting question, of course, as to how this plays out ahead, because we've still got significant demand. Migration is still very strong, but people are finding it more and more difficult to be able to afford rentals. And interestingly also, in my show that I published yesterday, I did go through this idea of auction clearances and whether the numbers mean anything at all. And I've a form of the view that you can't really take anything from any of the auction clearance numbers, nor can you necessarily take any information about the rental trend growth because it's too averaged and aggregated. And I'm still seeing lots of areas in Sydney where the rents are still being put up significantly. Same in Melbourne as well, by the way. And in some cases, the rents are being lifted not necessarily because the owner of the property wants it, because it's the agent managing it who actually is just going through the annual cycle. Well, of course, every year we put the rents up by 5% or whatever. There's a really important point: averages mask.
Yeah, and this is you're 100% correct there, Martin. And this is where at the end of the day, agents want to do earn more and do less. That's a real trend that we can comment on and be certain about. And that's the sad thing of the state of affairs that we're in.
Yeah, spot on. And unfortunately, ordinary people are being caught in the crossfire on this. Well, as we come to the end of the show, you have a very important tip here about being shrewd.
Look, you have to be shrewd. You have to, as we've been saying throughout the rant, you have to be shrewd with who you choose as a selling agent, who you choose as a property manager, and who you choose as an auctioneer, which we just spoke about. As I said earlier on, we're living in a time when agents want to get paid a lot more and certainly earn a lot less. So meeting up with a number of agencies and last week and this is what came out of the meeting, man, which was rather scary, right? So these are 4 offices, various sizes, and independent and also franchise groups. They're all outsourcing. They're all outsourcing the property management inspections, which are the mandatory inspections like the periodic inspections, the ingoing inspections, the outgoing inspections, and so they're outsourcing, some or all, and also the data collection points, which is really scary. And we'll talk a little bit more about it a bit later on, which is really, really scary. When you start thinking about that the data that you give, the information that you're giving the property manager, the real estate office, is not held in their office. It's actually held in many cases either in India or in the Philippines. Scary shit. 3 of the offices have had higher than usual new listings. This was interesting from a sales point of view. A large percentage of the properties that they've picked up by way of listings, roughly about 30% of the properties they've picked up for the listed properties are deceased estates, which was rather interesting. This is out of the ordinary, out of the annual. I wonder what happened. I wonder why. I'm not going to go into that. All are experiencing high vendor expectations. This was rather funny in a way. They're all saying that the vendors' expectations are really high. I feel like saying, I wonder why. And they're holding, the agents, the selling agents, are holding on to 30% of their listings off market because, in their opinion, they believe that the vendors are unrealistic. Why are they unrealistic? Because you told them that the property was worth $3 million, when in actual fact, yeah, the market's around the 2.5, 2.6. They're way off. So they're not putting those on the portals because they're telling the owners, well, we'll just wait until the market picks up a little bit more before we list it, because they don't want to do the work, obviously, in for various reasons that they're the ones that picked up the listing at a high price, and now they've got issues trying to sell it. Yeah, overall, most agents were complaining at this meeting about having to work harder for landlords and vendors over the recent months. I mean, can somebody tell these bunnies that they need to change the attitude? So in their eyes, buyers and vendors and tenants are the problem, not them.
That's remarkable. They couldn't be part of the problem, could they? No, 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 no. It's everybody else. And I find that idea of not letting properties on list because you don't want to, flood the market too much, despite the fact, as we saw, listings are actually rising. So that's an interesting one. And the fact that they want to do less for more. And that has been a consistent trend, I think, over the last at least 5 years. Effectively, they want to make more money for doing less. And the quality of service has been dropping, not universally. There are some good agents out there too, but quality of service has been, I think, dropping for many people. And so you need to be selective. You need to be very selective in terms of who you choose, whether you're actually thinking of getting somebody to help with a property sale or indeed manage an investment property. But there are some rules and regs, aren't there, which are meant to be guiding what people do. I wonder about this.
Well, this is the scary thing, Martin. This is what I'm saying. And people have got to be very, very careful, right? You've got to be very, very careful as to who you give your information to, whether you're a tenant, whether you are a follower of the show, and you're looking for a tenancy, you're looking, well, who is collecting the information that you're giving them, given the property management when you're making applications? You could be making 5, 6, 10, 15, 20, 30 applications, and all your information is going to all these different agencies and different property managers, and the majority of them aren't in the majority of the time, it isn't even the office that's collecting the information. It's actually being processed abroad, not in the state, not in the back office. It's been processed abroad, meaning in India, Pakistan, or what do you call it? The Philippines. Some have tried to outsource it to Vietnam, but the English language isn't up to speed there, so they've had some issues with some officers there. But this is where you start looking at the breaches of the regulations, and this is the regulation that you put up there. This is basically comes under the supervision guidelines that we sit on. And when you read through that document, this is why I say that a lot of these practices, all to save them time and to save the officers time, the property management teams and others time, and to save them money. But in my opinion, Martin, they're in breach of the regulations, and because I believe that they have truly lost custody of the information. They've lost custody. There's been a breach in the file, and who the hell knows what these companies are going to be doing with that information moving forward? And you're giving it to them freely. In a lot of the cases, you can't make an application for a property. In most cases, you can't make an application for a property if you're looking for a tenancy. The old way of filling out a form at the agency's office and handing it in. It's all done electronically, but you don't know who's got those files. And this is what they're saying. The reason why they're outsourcing is because a lot of these obviously is taking a lot of time from other processes that they want to do. And I was quiet and I said, well, so what is it that you want to do? I mean, this is your job. What other thing could you do? Could you want to be doing? Oh, we want to be working on the business, not in the business. Seriously.
I don't even know what that means. So, the bottom line is be a little bit cautious, and people are going to be cautious. Will say, I've got no choice. I need to actually engage with agents, and I need to. If I'm looking for a rental property, I've got to give my information. But the rules and regulations, whilst they sound good on paper, they're not being followed. And of course, going right back to where we came into this, and those rules and regulations are not being checked, and there's very little, observation of behaviour across agents. So it's very, very difficult for ordinary people, whether you're actually thinking of trying to rent or whether you're thinking of trying to get an agent to sell your property, to be able to make sure that they're doing the right things. And, there are some doing the right things, but unfortunately, there are many who are not.
No, and going back a step, when we were talking about insurances, a lot of insurance companies are not covering the agencies. If there's a breach in their in the IT, or if somebody's hacks the cloud or the servers or however they store the information, they're not covered. And the other thing is from a statutory point of view, the fines for not protecting the information and allowing or getting hacked, and somebody using that data to do other things with it illegally, you could be liable. It's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, the penalties for a company and those in charge of the company. And these supervision guidelines cover a lot of the things that the licensee in charge has to do, but they're not doing it because the poor little bunnies have got no time.
My heart goes out to them. Edwin, thank you so much for your contribution tonight. Always greatly received. I'm sure the audience also love hearing from you. We'll do it all again next week. There will be more shenanigans to talk about, I'm sure. Have a wonderful week, and we'll catch up soon.
Definitely, Martin. You take care and look after yourself.
Cheers.